Yo, what is up, y'all? Willie Beeman here, getting ready to bring you guys MyPlayer Build. So I've had this requested by quite a few people, and this is going to be very unique compared to a lot of people out there. So it's kind of up to you guys whether you want to use it or not. It's definitely got its strengths and weaknesses, which I'll cover all of that in the video. So my dude is a power forward. I'm a stretch big, and just to go over kind of the bigger guy builds, I would say stretch big and glass cleaner are kind of tier 1. Those are going to be like the two most dominant builds. Glass cleaner is definitely a great build for Pro-Am. Obviously stretch big is good too. It's just it doesn't have the rebounding that the glass cleaner has. That rebounding and strength attribute is basically gonna give a glass cleaner just incredible stats in terms of like rebounding. I've played with a glass cleaner. I have one that's like just basic that I maxed out strength and rebounding, and I've gotten like 4 or 5 double doubles in maybe like the 15 games I played. I think I got 14 or 15 assists in one game. So glass cleaners is kind of ridiculous. And with this stretch big build, which I'm going to show you guys is mine, the glass cleaner is definitely like the direct counterpart to you. So whenever you face a glass cleaner, that's going to be kind of your weakness. And I'll go over that a little bit later. So my height is 6'10". So most stretch bigs that you see in the park are going to be, stretch centers that are like 7 foot, 7'3", somewhere around there. But I'm actually a little bit smaller, and that's mostly due to, me playing 2K for several years as a big man. I got a lot of skills whenever it comes to boxing out and rebounding, so I'm really comfortable playing at this height. But if you're not the greatest rebounder, you don't play big a lot, I would probably recommend you maybe going with a center and making them either 7 foot or so, just because it'll give you a little bit better chance of getting boards. So another thing that I do that's going to be weird is going to be I put my wingspan all the way down. That's for the categories over there on the right. I can definitely tell a difference with this wingspan in terms of grabbing some rebounds occasionally, and definitely in the block category. I definitely don't get a lot of blocks. I'm more of a contest type of guy, especially on the inside, than a block kind of guy. So that's something to keep in mind. If you guys kind of want to be a little bit more defensive, you might kind of go on a little bit of the higher range, or even just kind of keeping it medium. So I have 82.2. And then weight, I went all the way down, which is kind of risky, but it gives my guy a lot of balance in my attributes. My guy's basically got like 60-ish, 60, 70-ish attributes like across the board. So my guy can do a little bit of everything, besides the shooting attributes. So it's kind of up to you guys again. If you aren't comfortable with boxing out and getting rebounds with the smaller guy, you might kind of go a little bit higher and give him a little bit less speed. But it's kind of a deal where I'm really comfortable playing with this 200-pound build, so that's kind of what I'm gonna go with. And then on shoulder width, I didn't know this kind of affected things whenever I first made my build, but if you pay attention to wingspan up at the top, you'll see that as I change this, your wingspan actually changes. So those attributes that wingspan actually affects will be affected by your shoulder width. So for my shoulder width, I went as wide as you could possibly go. If I'd have noticed that in the first place, I probably would have went skinnier. But that's just kind of like a thing after the fact. I mean, I'm already too far into my guy to really go back and make another one. With the crazy grind that they got this year, which I'll cover later in the vid. If you stay tuned, after I get done with my build, I'll go over how you get attributes really quickly. Just kind of let you guys know some of the shortcuts and things like that. And then handed, I always do left. I've been doing left-handed for forever in 2K, even though I'm right-handed in real life. And then I'm number 8, obviously. So I'm going to go into the build and we'll check out the attributes now. Alright, now to check out my attributes. I'm a 98 overall. I've super grinded this guy. I'm actually in the middle of the playoffs in my first year. So I've done just a crap ton of practices, and tried out a lot of different things, trying to get the training and everything down. And if you stay late in the video, I'll go over really a lot of the key tips into getting through a career, or getting through your My Career quicker, and getting your attribute upgrades unlocked. Obviously for VC port, that's not really a big deal for you. But I bought some VC whenever the game came out, so I just kind of wanted to unlock the attribute upgrade so I could just go ahead and apply them. But go through my guy right here. So you can see my mid range and my 3-point scoring are A and A plus. This guy can straight up stroke from 3-point. So if we go over here and we check out my actual ratings, I have a 93 mid-range contested and open, and 93 3-pointer contested and open. So I don't know if you guys have sharpshooters or anything like that, but if you do, even sharpshooter guards really don't have this higher rating. This is pretty damn high. I can hit shots just as easily as basically anybody in the park. I think a 94 is as high as you can get. I didn't really do a lot of testing on that, but 93 is definitely going to be sufficient to hit green lights and everything that you need to do. So as we kind of go through some of these other attributes, this guy is pretty awful at layups and dunks. In terms of layups, you really got to get the release down for layups. I'm still kind of working on that, just because I don't do a lot of layups, so I'm not getting a lot of practice. But I have hit a lot of greens on layups, and that's definitely a key to making layups with your lower layup rating players. You just can't really just go up there and spam and make them like kind of like a playmaker, or maybe a shot creator or something like that. This guy's not built for inside scoring, so I usually stay out of the paint. But he can bang. I mean, he's big, so you can still get a lot of dunks, cutting and things like that. So ball controls is 68, which is a key attribute. It's actually pretty high for a big guy. You're not going to be able to cook anybody or anything like that, but honestly, you really don't need to do a lot of playmaking with this guy. He's more of kind of a support role, I guess. You're more of a screener and off-ball movement kind of guy. I kind of do more of a JJ Redick style offensive strategy for my guy. So I'll run to the corners. I'll run along the 3-point line, run along the baseline. Try to keep my guy moving, because a lot of times I'll get stuck on a lot of 7-3 players that are really slow. So if you keep moving, it's really difficult for them to guard you, especially because they tire out really quickly with their stamina. So that's really a key to this guy. He's super balanced and super quick. So obviously in the post, I'm gonna be garbage. This guy's not made for post play, so I'm not really worried about that. Defense is all just standard defense attributes. And then speed, speed with ball, acceleration, all these are other categories as well that are really good for this guy. A lot of these 7-3 glass cleaners and things like that, they're going to be your counterpart that you play against a lot as the 3. They usually have, around 40 to 45. Some of them lower their weight quite a bit, and they might be up there with you, around 60 or so. But a ton of them, you're going to have about 15 attribute points on them in terms of speed and acceleration. So it's really, really nice for getting open and things like that, or running around, cutting, even, contesting and trying to get back on transition defense and things like that. So this guy's super balanced. I mean, this build is basically shooting lights out and balanced everywhere else. And that's really the cool thing about the stretch big build, is it's really balanced everywhere besides shooting. It's got a decent, rebounding attribute, which is always a key for a big man. It's got a decent defensive attribute, which all the builds do. It's got decent playmaking, decent off the dribble shot. It's got semi-decent layups. I would say that's probably an area where it's kind of low. And then it's got post scoring is basically exactly the same as every build besides the post scorer build. So if you even wanted it to be kind of a post scorer as well, you could max out your post scoring and get a pretty decent post scorer out of this build as well. So it's super balanced, but honestly, a glass cleaner with max strength and max rebounding is going to be very difficult. I'm super experienced, and those guys push me around pretty easily. My strength's pretty low. As you can see down here, I got a 56. A glass cleaner that's 7'3", 340, he's gonna have a 94 strength, and strength is kind of like a hidden gem attribute this year. A lot of the animations with the pushes and things like that, you can really get position this year as a center, and it's a lot different in the positioning battle this year as opposed to last year. That's probably the biggest change in terms of big men. So as a glass cleaner, I get pushed around a lot, but at the same time, as long as you get a good box out and you get good positioning on a glass cleaner, you can snag over them. Obviously, I'm not going to win 50-50 balls most of the time. But at the same time, I'm going to come down court. I'm going to hit a three anyway, even if they get the offensive rebound and a putback. So, I mean, it's a 3-to-2, ratio there. So I'm okay with, missing out on a few rebounds here and there, as long as I can stroke threes, and green lights from basically anywhere on the court. So over here, check out my badges. So right now I got 2 park badges. I got game point and winners only. Game point you basically get by hitting, I'm gonna say, around 50 game winning shots. That's kind of where I was at whenever I got this badge. And then winners only is gonna be based off of like a certain amount of times you got a 10-game win streak. Mostly that's kind of like my guess on that, but whenever I got this badge, I just hit 10 games on a win streak, and I have gotten probably, I would say, 5 or so 10-game plus win streaks so far in 2K. So that's kind of like those things right there. And so on to the badges. Whenever you make a guy, I would definitely recommend grinding out some badges before you go to the park. So catch and shoot, corner specialist, limitless range, these are obvious things. If you need to, you don't know how to get these things, catch and shoot, basically as soon as you catch the ball, you shoot it. As simple as that. Corner specialist, you get in the corner. This year, the corner specialist actually doesn't activate in front of the three-point line. In years past, you could actually be in front of the three-point line in the corner, but this year you got to be behind the three-point line. So that's definitely like a key change to that. Limitless range, this is a big one right here. It makes a big difference whenever you have limitless range in terms of, as a 6'10", a big guy, if you can stand, quite a bit past the three-point line and still hit really high percentage shots, you can pull the big man out of the paint really far. This is a good badge for twos, especially because you'll give your ball handler like a crap ton of room to work. And then deep range Deadeye and pick and popper. Deep range Deadeye, obviously you just shoot in somebody's face, and this actually doesn't have to be from the three-point line. You can actually be just inside the three-point line for this to activate, so just keep that in mind if you guys are trying to get this. And then pick and popper, this badge actually, it was kind of a pain to get, but after I got it, I noticed that a key thing that I was getting wrong a lot of times is the pick and popper, you actually have to pick the defender that's actually guarding ball. So you can't do an off-ball screen and then have that screen happen and have him throw you the ball and then shoot it. It actually doesn't activate whenever you do that. So you got to make sure and pick the guy that's guarding ball. So if the point guard's bringing the ball up, you have to pick the opposite team's point guard. You can't go over in the corner and pick like a shooting guard's guy off of them or something like that. So that's kind of a crappy thing about that badge, but at the same time, it's definitely a good badge to have as a stretch guy, especially in the twos or something like that. I'm sure this badge is going to come in handy there. So my bronze badges, I got Lob City Passer, Pickpocket, Brick Walls, obviously a good one to have as a big man, One Man Fast Break, and then that's pretty much all I got. Just because I've been trying to get this this Pro badge, which is the red badge you guys might have seen. I've been doing a lot of limitless range lately just to see if I can get this badge, but it's really tough to get. I don't know exactly how many things you have to do, but I do know you have to do things that fall within your 5 upgradable badge category. So that's just kind of like my 2 cents on my badges. And then one other thing I want to show you guys in terms of Something to pay attention to with your kind of build is your shot chart. This shot chart actually makes a big difference for your MyPlayer. You want all of these spots to be red. Obviously, I don't really care about that spot in the middle. That's fine with me with it not being completely red. But these spots, if they're red, they actually give you a bigger shot meter from those areas. And I've actually tested this out on a different MyPlayer just to see what would happen because I had heard this. So I actually shot a ton of good threes from the corner, and then I went to the opposite corner and shot a ton of threes and purposely missed them. And then whenever I go into my career or I play another game, I actually notice a huge difference in my bar at the bottom from those different areas. So my bar would be a lot bigger in the spot that I'm hot at, and it would be really tiny than the spot that I'm cold at. So that's something you got to pay attention to whenever you're doing your guy. In terms of player styles and signature styles, basically the only real dribble move that I use is my hesitation. I use normal 1, which is hesitation 3 from last year. So I don't do a lot of dribbling. I mainly just do maybe a behind the back move every once in a while and the hesitation 3 to create some space. Just because this build is more for off ball movement and not really like a dribbler. You're not going to be running point guard with this build unless you're playing with some some randoms or some crappy players. And you guys can get some tips on kind of like my play style and things like that from my other videos. But this is going to be it for the attributes for my player. Next, I'm just going to go over some attribute upgrade, I guess, getting techniques to kind of show you guys how you can maybe get your guy up to a 90 something overall a little bit quicker. I know it's a grind, and it was definitely a pain in the butt. And honestly, 2K has kind of ruined that this year. They give you 80 unlocks whenever you make a new MyPlayer, and you have 150 potential unlocks to get. So that means that you have 70 attribute upgrades to unlock. Well, it takes 7 to 8 practices to basically get one of those. And it's probably so the practices to get that, it's around 7 to 8 practices to get one attribute upgrade. So if you took 7 practices to get those, it would actually take you 490 practices to get all of your upgrades. And at 500, it would be 560 if it took you 8 practices, which that's over. But it'd be somewhere between those numbers. It might be a little bit lower than 490, but it's somewhere around there. So honestly, 2K kind of screwed that up this year, in my opinion. If you look at last year, 2K16, you actually only had to unlock 25 attribute upgrades, which in turn you'd only have to play maybe 2 to 3 games to get an attribute upgrade. And the practices were much shorter, obviously, because you only had to quit. You didn't actually have to practice. So this year they've increased the grind by, I would say, around 100%. So if you guys got a 99 MyPlayer last year, legitly, I would say however long it took you to get your MyPlayer last year, at least double that, because it's gonna be a grind. And last year you could actually foul out of games and still get your attribute upgrades. Obviously they patched that later in the game, but at the same time it's kind of lame in my opinion. Just because they got all these different builds, and I know everybody wants to try a different build, which is kind of strange to me. I got this stretch big, and obviously I like playing with my big, but I want to be a point guard every once in a while. But at the same time, I really don't want to have to spend 100 to 500 hours grinding to get a decent MyPlayer. Between badges and getting these attribute upgrades, it's kind of unreal. I couldn't imagine being a real casual player and playing this game right now, in terms of trying to get a really good MyPlayer. I really feel for you guys. If you could only play like 2 or 3 hours a night, it'll probably take you until 2K18 to get your guy up to a 99, and that's if you don't play a lot of MyPark or anything like that. If you just basically my career grind. So I'm going to show you guys a lot of things that'll cut out a lot of time. So let's kind of get right into that right now. Alright, first off, what I want to show you guys, right as soon as you kind of get into your My Career, what you're going to want to do is, as soon as you load into your college, unless you kind of feel bad about this, I completely fouled out of all of my college games. It doesn't make any difference on your NBA player. The only thing it'll change is where you get drafted in the draft. So basically, my boy Jakai, he got drafted number 1. I got drafted number 19. Whenever we come into the league, we literally are exactly the same. You're not going to get more minutes, starting at number 1 or, being drafted at number 19. Nothing changes in terms of anything like that. So it's not a big deal to foul out, and it'll cut out a crap ton of time. I don't think you can foul out of your scrimmage game, the very first game, but you can foul out all the rest. So that's tip number 1 to get you at least to this point where you're in the NBA season. And then tip number 2 is going to be under settings. So obviously settings, I run rookie, and next thing I want to point out is run 5 minutes. Do not run 12-minute quarters. You'll be tempted to do that just to get more time into games, but honestly, you're going to be playing, you need to play a ton of games anyway to get these attribute upgrades, so you might as well just play a ton of games in terms of getting badges and things like that, instead of playing a giant 12-minute quarter game and then playing a few practices, a giant 12-minute quarter game. Play a 5-minute game, do practices, 5-minute game, do practices, 5-minute game, do practices. That way you spread out your badge grinding and your attribute grinding kind of more evenly. If you play the 12-minute quarters, you'll get your badges a lot quicker, but at the same time you won't unlock your attribute upgrades very, very quickly doing that. So second thing, game speed. Gotta go 100 here. It's gonna feel really weird, just because it's super fast paced like this. The default is 50, so it's actually twice as fast. So basically, whenever you're running around with your power forward, you're gonna feel like a point guard, just because the speed is just crazy. But honestly, you can get through so many more possessions, and you can foul out or whatever you need to do quicker. So that's kind of a big deal there. And then under action replays, camera cuts, things like that, just turn those on never. You don't really want replays popping up every once in a while. It just kind of slows things down. And then the rest of this is just all, it's all preference. So those are going to be the setup basically for your career. So next, what we're going to go into is practices. So I'm going to show you the most efficient way to do practices. So first off, you're going to want to go to your menu, and then what you want to do is go into the practice facility. These are going to be where you get your attribute upgrades. So basically, you'll have all of these off days to do different practices and things like that. Those are what you're going to need to focus on. Do not do any kind of endorsements or events or anything like that. Just ignore all of that. Basically, the only thing you want to pay attention to is your text messages. You always want to stay on top of Coach K. He's the way that you unlock custom jump shots. So check those after each game just to see if Coach K's hit you up. I haven't unlocked mine yet, so I'm not quite sure when you unlock that, but that's just kind of a thing that you need to do. So really, another thing that I don't like about the attribute upgrade system that they've done this year is I don't mind them making it a little bit more grindy, but I do mind the loading screens. Increasing the number of practices that we need to do by an exponential number basically really just increases the amount of loading screens, and you'll see what I'm talking about whenever I get into the practice, which you guys probably already know how to get through a practice really efficiently, but I'm gonna go over it anyway for anybody that's new. These loading screens just get super annoying if you're gonna have to do 490 practices. Really, the loading screens and then the cutscenes for the story just they overwhelm you sometimes. The grind is way worse this year, mainly due to the cutscenes and these loading screens. It's basically those two things making everything just awful. I don't know if you guys are fans of my channel or not, but last year I actually created a 99 MyPlayer in a little over 7 hours. So basically, I started a guy up and got all of his attribute upgrades in 7 hours. This year, I would say if somebody was going to speed run a MyPlayer, I couldn't imagine it being under 40 hours maybe. You know, I spent, oh man, I don't even know how many hours I spent doing my MyPlayer. Basically, I stayed up basically until 10 in the morning a lot of times, you know, playing all night, all throughout the week, you know, trying to get this guy, you know, ready to play. So it's definitely completely different than last year in terms of, you know, getting a good MyPlayer. So you gotta get ready for that grind, and don't worry about getting your guy, you know, super awesome, you know, really quickly. Just go out and, you know, play some games. So, you know, we're in the practice facility right here. I'm basically just waiting on somebody to invite me to play in an event, and then I'm gonna go in here into this weight room. So they invited me to play Boston defense, which Boston defense is basically the most awful drill. So I do not want to play that drill. Some drills are actually quicker than doing this strategy, but most of them aren't. So basically, you're just going to run over here and do the vertical jump. Vertical jump is arguably the fastest one, and the only thing you have to do is hit down on the left stick and then right on the left, or up on the left stick. So it's just kind of down and up. And you know, if your guy's not like doesn't have a super great vertical, it might be tough to get gold on these. Basically, what you want to look for is a knee bend, or you can look at the hands whenever he flips the hands back. Basically, whenever he gets to the top, you want to jump. And you see that doing work meter up at the top? That's basically your attribute upgrade system. So you want to fill up the doing work meter in your practice. And after you get it filled up, you actually, you know, you can't get any more done. And so after I get this done, I actually want to exit right before it hits the top, and it'll actually make it where the doing work meter doesn't have to deplete before I load out. So that's kind of a little bonus like tip right there. So you want to exit right before that meter fills up, because if you exit after it fills up, it actually has to like sit there and deplete all the way down and then show you all the animations and stuff. So it's a little bit of a skip in time, which whenever you're doing 490 practices, you know, if you can save, you know, a few seconds here, a few seconds there, it's actually a big deal. You know, that equates into, you know, 20 minutes or so of your time. So that's it whenever it comes to practices. There are things called team practices, which I'm in the playoffs, so I don't have team practices at this point. I think they're all just regular practices, but basically it'll be a practice and it'll be in blue. It's in blue for me. It might be a different color for you guys. I'm not 100% sure, just because I haven't played with another MyPlayer. But whenever you go into the team practice, they'll actually have you do a drill, and what you'll want to do is you'll hit options or the start button. I'm not 100% sure on what it is on Xbox, but whenever you're in the drill, if you hit the start button, you can actually tell them to quit and go to shoot around. And then whenever you go to shoot around, you can actually go into your weight room and do the vertical jump as well. So that's, you know, just some quick tips on how to get through practices and things like that. Just kind of main things to look out for. And my boy Robo's over here joining the court. I'm sure he's probably gonna watch the vid. So what's up, Robo? But anyway, you know, just you know, let me know what you guys think, and if you guys have any tips for anybody else, you know, leave them down in the comments. And if you like the video, leave a like, and if you haven't subscribed, subscribe. This is Willie Beeman, and I'm out. Thanks.